Come on, come on. Another 8. Well, looks like Jim the Fighter is going to be dragon fodder yet again. Hi, welcome back aboard the Earthmote. I'm Randall, and I was reading through my first edition Dungeon Master's Guide, and I noticed an interesting section that Gary Gygax had included on rolling ability scores. He starts by talking about the old school standard, which is rolling 3d6 down the line, and he kind of trashes on it a bit. He goes on to say that it produces marginal characters that have a short life expectancy. And he discusses how the results of the 3d6 down the line often result in character concepts that the player doesn't really want to play or identify with. This discussion is quite interesting coming out way back in 1979, because when you look at the modern OSR scene, you see that this 3d6 down the line method can often feel like it's sort of held up on this pedestal. It's sort of this rite of passage. But advanced Dungeons and Dragons texts contradict that, and that was written 45 years ago. Now, I do think it's worth calling out a couple main things here. First, the OSR scene doesn't actually replicate the game how it was played 40 years ago. If you talk to any old veterans, they'll tell you that the ideas espoused by the OSR scene are sort of revisionist take on those old rule sets. And I think that's perfectly fine. I personally think that the R in OSR stands for Renaissance, which means sort of this revitalization of these old ideas, these classic ideas. When we take influence from them, it's not really meant to be a direct copy. Secondly, in the OSR scene, Basic Expert is probably the most popular and most played retro clone. And Basic and Expert do have different treatments of ability scores. A Basic Expert character can be fairly serviceable under the 3d6 down the line treatment, whereas an Advanced Dungeons and Dragons character, maybe not so much. Getting back to our AD&D text, Gary Gygax proposes 4 new methods for rolling character stats, so I thought it'd be fun to take a look at them, plus a bonus 5th method coming from a later campaign setting. So let's go ahead and dive into them and see what we got. Method 1 should be the most familiar to modern players. Method 1 states all scores are recorded and arranged in order the player desires. 46 are rolled and the lowest die is discarded. This is the most popular method of rolling for stats nowadays, and we'll see why it might have stuck around after looking at his other proposals for rolling dice for character generation. 46, drop the lowest, is quite reliable. You're going to get a pretty competent character out of that usually. In this case, your average score is going to be about 12.24, and your most likely roll is going to be a 13, occurring 13.27% of the time. These are quite a bit better than the straight 3d6, which averages a 10.5 score. I'm going to go ahead and roll up a set here and we'll see what we get. Okay, so coming back, I rolled an 8, a 15, a 16, a 12, a 9, and a 15. In this case, we got 2 numbers that are a little bit below average, the 8 and the 9, but we also got 3 that are well above average, the 16 and the 2 15s. So this is going to make a pretty competent character. We'll have no problems rolling up a character concept based off of these stats. Next, we have method 2, which is as listed. All scores are recorded and arranged as in method 1. 3d6 are rolled 12 times and the highest 6 scores are retained. This one is interesting because you are essentially cherry picking your best rolls, which should result in a substantially better character than 3d6 down the line. So I'm going to go ahead and roll up these 12 rolls and I'll come back and show you what I got. Okay, so you can see on the screen the 2 sets of 6 that I rolled. It's just a habit to cluster them in 6s. But the best of those picked out is a 16, a 15, a 14, 13, 13, and 11. That's even better than our results from method 1. Again, keep in mind we do have a sample size of 1 here, so we can't draw any statistical conclusions from that, but we do seem to have shored up our lower scores from method 1 pretty nicely. The drawback here is that we have to roll 12 times and then do a little bit of a selection process, whereas in method 1 we just make 6 rolls, drop the lowest, and we're good to go. All right, buckle in. If you thought method 2 involved some rolling, we are just getting started. Method 3 is as follows. Scores are rolled according to each ability category in order: strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, and charisma. 3d6 are rolled 6 times for each ability, and the highest score in each category is retained for that category. Sounds like we have 36 dice rolls to make. I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and I'll come back with the results. All right, here's the results I got. You can see each one broken out. And then the best result here is a strength of 14, a intelligence of 14, a wisdom of 11, a dexterity of 14, a constitution of 16, and a charisma of 18. That's another really strong character. I actually didn't have any terrible rolls through all 36. My lowest was a 6, which is definitely some skewed variance. There's about a 4.5% chance of rolling a 5 or lower, and we did not do that in any of our 36 rolls. And funny enough, we hit that rare 18 on a 3d6, which was our final roll of the 36, and we only had a 0.5% chance of actually doing that. Method 4 is our most intensive rolling method yet. The Dungeon Master Guide states, 3d6 are rolled sufficient times to generate the 6 ability scores in order for 12 characters. The player then selects the single set of scores which he or she finds most desirable, and these scores are noted on the character record sheet. All right, let me roll up 12 characters and I'll come back. So you can see I had to put the 12 scores in a spreadsheet because it just got so ridiculous. Looking at the spreadsheet, we actually had some pretty bad rolls. If you total up the scores, you should have at least 65 to be statistically average, yet 8 of our 12 scores are actually below that number. We have one that is notably better than the rest, and even that has 3 kind of low scores, and then there are 3 strong scores, with it being a 14 dex, a 16 constitution, and a 15 charisma. So with that, I'd probably play it as a thief or something like that. So we see from method 4 a lot of interesting results. It's essentially probably what people were just doing back in the day, which was rolling 3d6 down the line until they got a set that they actually liked and wanted to use, which is kind of funny that he just sort of formalized it and said, just roll 12 times and see what you like. That is a lot of rolling, and I can see why this method probably didn't survive into the modern day. All right, that covers the 4 methods listed in the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Dungeons Master's Guide. However, I did have a 5th method I wanted to try because I remembered this one. It actually comes from a campaign setting, the Dark Sun campaign setting, which was designed during the AD&D 2nd edition days. So it came out a little bit later. The method is as written. Roll 4d4 plus 4 6 times, once for each ability score. Write down the totals in the order they are rolled and apply them to the 6 abilities in that order. I really remember this method because using the D4 is so unique. The D6 has long been the king of rolling stats for D&D characters. So to see something else used is really notable and interesting, and not something crazy like rolling a single D20 for your stats. Really stuck with me. Dark Sun is meant to be this really hostile world where only the strongest survive. And as a result, the dice rolling methods are intended to make more powerful characters that stand a chance of survival. Rolling a 4d4 plus 4 is going to result in an average score of 14, which is the highest we've seen. A d4 is going to have less variance than your standard d6 by the virtue of having fewer faces on the die. It just can't be as swingy, but you're still going to have variance because you're rolling dice. All right, let's go ahead and roll up a Dark Sun character and see what we get. Okay, here's the numbers that I got. We have a strength of 18, an intelligence of 12, a wisdom of 17, a dexterity of 12, a constitution of 11, and a charisma of 18. So as we can see, we got some pretty strong stats. We have 2 18s and a 17. The others are a little bit lower than average, but not terrible by any stretch of the imagination. I imagine this is probably some gladiator type character that has the strength to be deadly and the charisma to play up the crowds in the arenas. I know there's kind of gladiatorial type arenas in Dark Sun, so it might kind of fit that concept. So that's it. That's 5 interesting ways to roll up stats from old school Dungeons and Dragons and make new characters. I can see why 46 dropped the lowest has persisted through time. It's a fast method and it produces pretty reliable characters. Of course, modern editions have also introduced the standard array, which a lot of people like using. There's no rolling required and everyone starts with the same stats. I personally enjoy the rolling of dice to make characters. Yeah, it does suck if you get a weaker character, but perhaps try suggesting one of these other methods to see if you can get a character that is a little bit stronger. Maybe your table would have a little bit fun trying a different method for once. Let me know what your preferred method for stat generation is, and if you've tried any of these out before. Please like and subscribe. Consider checking out Enchanted Nimbus, my monthly newsletter. Thanks for hopping aboard the Earthmote. I'll see you in the next one.